Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are strapping in for a really stunning journey. We're heading deep into the geographical heart of our planet, the Amazon. Now, when you picture the Amazon, you probably think, lungs of the earth, this huge, impenetrable sea of green, wild, untamed.
Right. And for centuries, that idea of wildness really dominated how academics saw it.
Exactly. The thinking was basically that the jungle was just too difficult, too harsh for complex, large-scale human societies to really take root and thrive. But, there were always these whispers, these tales from explorers, adventurers, talking about lost cities, El Dorado, seeing these, like, straight stone rows, huge plazas swallowed by the forest.
And that's the real tension here, isn't it? For hundreds of years, the, let's say, established view in academia was pretty firm, and it was mostly based on, traditional field work, looking at soil on the surface.
Right.
The conclusion was the environment there, the Amazonian soil, it just meant any human groups had to be small, scattered, temporary tribes, maybe.
So no big civilizations possible.
He just couldn't see it. They thought sophisticated societies had to, conquer nature, not work with it. So it couldn't happen there. And what's really crucial, I think, is that this viewpoint, it meant completely dismissing indigenous oral histories.
Ah, right. The stories passed down.
Generations of testimony, people talking about huge settlements, complex ways of governing, powerful leaders. But those stories, they were just sort of brushed aside, labeled as myth because, well, they didn't fit the Western idea of what a civilization should look like.
So were they myths? Or maybe fragments of a truth the world just wasn't ready for? That's our mission today, really. To unpack how this revolutionary kind of unbiased technology just completely flipped that script, proving that these powerful, complex societies didn't just exist, but they actually flourished, right, where experts insisted it was, impossible.
Yeah, ecologically impossible, they thought.
Okay, so let's get into it. The absolute game changer here is LiDAR. That's LiDAR, light detection and ranging. We hear about it a lot now, maybe with self-driving cars, mapping things with incredible precision. But what happens when you point that same tool at the Amazon, the most dense, complex environment we have?
Well, what's so fascinating and powerful about LiDAR is its ability to just ignore the canopy, mostly.
Ignore the trees. How?
So these systems, they're usually mounted on helicopters, maybe planes, and they don't just take pictures. Instead, they shoot out lasers. Hundreds of thousands of tiny laser pulses every single second.
Wow, hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, it's an incredible amount of data. Now, a lot of those pulses, sure, they hit leaves, branches, they get absorbed or scattered.
Okay.
But enough of them find gaps. They snake through the canopy, hit the actual ground underneath, and then bounce back.
Ah, I see.
And the computers collect all those return signals, millions of precise measurements of the ground itself. Then they use that data to basically build a 3D map of the landscape without any vegetation.
Like digitally stripping away the jungle.
Exactly. You get this perfect topographical map of the bare earth, stuff hidden for centuries.
That's just, it's a massive leap for archaeology, isn't it? I mean, think about the old way. Decades of painstaking digging, right? Little trenches, finding maybe one isolated bit here, another there.
Slow, meticulous work, often in really difficult conditions.
Yeah. And imagine being an archaeologist who spent, say, 30 years excavating one single mound, painstakingly mapping it out. And then LiDAR comes along and maps an entire connected network of cities, roads, everything in maybe an afternoon's flight.
The speed and the sheer scale are just revolutionary. There's no other word for it.
So what happened when they finally turned this technology loose on parts of the Amazon that everyone had written off?
Well, the findings were pretty jaw-dropping, honestly. Beneath that green blanket, it wasn't scattered huts.
No.
No, they found these intricate geometric shapes. Massive earthworks, maybe defensive walls, huge, clearly deliberate patterns in the land, and unmistakable evidence of, urban planning, hydraulic engineering even.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting for me, the scale you're talking about.
Yeah.
The complexity.
It's immense.
So these first surveys, they showed urban centers much, much bigger than anyone had really dared to imagine.
They're bigger. And deliberately designed spaces, these enormous plazas.
Plazas. Like town squares.
Exactly, but huge. Spaces clearly built for thousands of people to gather, for ceremonies, civic life, whatever it was.
Thousands.
Yeah.
Okay. But it wasn't just big individual cities, was it? You mentioned connections.
That's maybe the most stunning part. It suggests regional organization, maybe even control. They found this precise grid of roads, perfectly straight roads.
Okay, through the jungle.
Often raised up on causeways, yeah.
Yeah.
Stretching for dozens of miles sometimes. And they didn't just connect, one village to the next. They linked entire settlements, multiple centers, it looks like the veins of some ancient, huge, organized system.
Wow. Superorganism.
Kind of. And we're talking monumental structures, too. Tiered pyramids made of earth, massive mounds, things that really make you think of, well, the scale you see with the Maya or the Inca.
So this forces a total rethink, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The population estimates alone must be staggering.
They are. Based on the density and size of these settlements, researchers are estimating tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people living here, all at the same time.
Hundreds of thousands.
In the Amazon.
In some areas, potentially denser populations than many European cities had back then.
Yeah.
And that level of population, that kind of sophisticated infrastructure, well, it implies much more than just a few chiefs. It points towards advanced governance, long-term planning for resources, social structures.
Hierarchy.
Definitely.
Yeah.
One of the lead researchers put it really well, I thought. He said it was like they lifted a veil, and underneath, what we assumed was pristine, untouched wilderness was actually, in large part, a human-built landscape, managed, engineered, thriving for centuries.
Which brings us right back to that old problem, doesn't it? The
Yeah.
poor soil theory. If they built all this, supported these huge populations in a place everyone thought was infertile, how did they do it? They clearly didn't conquer the rainforest.
No, they didn't.
It sounds more like they perfected this art of partnering with it. How on earth did they feed an empire that size there? That partnership idea, I think that's exactly right. And the evidence shows this incredible ecological understanding, something we're maybe only just starting to appreciate again.
So the soil wasn't naturally rich.
Generally, no. Amazonian topsoil is famously thin, easily depleted. So what did they do? They made their own soil, systematically engineered it.
Made soil? How?
They created something we now call terrapa, or Amazonian dark earth. And it wasn't accidental, it was deliberate, sustainable, really sophisticated.
Okay.
They basically enriched the soil with a kind of recipe. Charcoal from managed fires, kitchen waste, bones, broken pottery shards, all mixed together. And this created this deep, incredibly rich black earth that holds nutrients for centuries. It actually regenerates itself to an extent.
So it's artificial soil, but it's self-sustaining fertility.
Precisely. That allowed them to farm continuously, intensively, in ways that just shouldn't have been possible, according to the old theories.
Wow. So they weren't just brilliant architects and city planners. They were like
No.
chemical engineers of the earth itself.
You could say that. And it wasn't just the soil. What about the water? The huge seasonal floods that define so much of the Amazon.
Right. The flooding must have been a massive challenge.
They were master hydraulic engineers, too.
Yeah.
The LiDAR shows these extensive systems, raised fields built up above the flood levels, and intricate networks of canals.
For irrigation or drainage.
Both, probably. Designed specifically to manage the intense wet season floods, protect their crops, but also maybe control water flow for irrigation during drier times. Really clever management.
And what were they growing with all this tech?
Staples like high-yield maize, cassava, but also other things, exotic fruits. And because their cities were all linked up by those raised causeways.
They're straight roads.
Yeah, trade flourished. This wasn't just local swapping. The evidence suggests people were moving standardized goods, specific types of pottery, specialized tools, maybe sacred objects over really significant distances. It shows cultural connection, economic integration across this whole network.
It's a profound lesson, isn't it? Building this massive, enduring civilization by working with the environment, actively enriching it, not just taking from it.
A very different model than we often see elsewhere.
But if it was so ingenious, seemingly so sustainable, why did it end? Why did these great cities fall silent? What happened to all those people?
That's still a big question, and the sources suggest a few devastating possibilities. The exact timing and cause are still debated, of course.
Okay.
One factor could be gradual climate shifts. Even the most sophisticated farming system is vulnerable if rainfall patterns change drastically over the long term. That could have really disrupted their canal systems, their terrapa management.
Cripple their food supply.
Potentially. But there's a more dramatic theory, and perhaps a more likely one for a rapid decline.
Which is?
Disease. When European contact eventually reached the fringes of the Amazon, even indirectly at first, it brought diseases. Smallpox, measles.
Things the local populations had absolutely no immunity to.
Exactly. And think about it. You have hundreds of thousands of people living in relatively dense, connected urban centers. a new virulent disease sweeping through that kind of population.
That would be catastrophic. A massive, swift collapse in numbers.
Very likely. It could have happened incredibly quickly, maybe even before large numbers of Europeans physically arrived in those specific areas. The diseases traveled faster than the explorers.
And then the jungle would just reclaim everything.
Tragically, yes. Swallowing the abandoned fields, the roads, the plazas, the mounds, until LiDAR came along.
So this rediscovery, it's not just about rewriting ancient history books. It feels like it has really immediate modern implications too. You said every new survey finds more.
It does. More structures, more clues, more sites are being revealed constantly as the technology is deployed more widely.
Which must raise some urgent questions,
And
ethically, environmentally.
Absolutely. We now know that hidden beneath the canopy is this vast, previously unknown archaeological heritage, and much of it is completely unprotected.
So vulnerable.
Very vulnerable to modern threats. Looting is a huge risk now that locations might become known. Illegal logging, mining, agricultural expansion, these things can destroy sites before they're even properly studied. There's a profound responsibility now to protect them.
And what about the people who live there now? The indigenous communities.
Critically important, this research absolutely has to be done in partnership with them. They are, after all, the descendants of the people who built these civilizations. Their ancestors were the ones whose histories were dismissed for so long.
They were right all along.
They were. Their knowledge, their connection to the land, it's essential, both for understanding these places and for figuring out the best ways to preserve them. They need to be central figures in this, guiding the research and conservation. It's a cultural imperative, really, not just a scientific courtesy.
That really feels like the ultimate takeaway here, doesn't it? History isn't set in stone. It's hidden. It's waiting. And what was dismissed for centuries as just, fantasy folk tales turns out to be real. An incredible empire built not just on power, but on ingenuity, on resilience, and this deep, sustainable connection with the natural world.
It fundamentally forces us to rethink what civilization can even look like, especially in the Americas. It pushes the timeline way back for complex societies there and shows they didn't have to follow the same architectural path we see elsewhere.
A different kind of monumentality.
Exactly. Built with the earth, not just on it. And if you think about the bigger picture, the Amazon has just opened up this enormous new chapter in the human story. We've only scanned a fraction of it with LiDAR so far.
Right.
The sheer number of structures they're already finding suggests this is just the beginning. So you have to wonder, if we keep scanning, keep searching, keep lifting that veil, how many more civilizations are lying there, waiting under the green, ready to completely rewrite our understanding of who we are and where we came from?